Today we are going to be looking at organic compounds. Organic compounds, basically, they are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Not only that, but some contain nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. So, as long as it is an organic compound, then it must contain all of these ones. Some of them, they have an extra of this. It does not mean that they have all of them, but it could be maybe one or two among these ones. But this one, it's a must that they are supposed to be there. And then you see the examples of organic compounds or molecules. Number one, we have carbohydrates. We're going to look at this one in detail. When we talk about carbohydrates, basically you're talking about the starch in plants and the glycogen in animals, cellulose. So those are examples of carbohydrates. Then you have lipids. Here we are talking about the oils. So like the fats in animals and then the oils in plants. Then we have proteins. Proteins can also be modified into enzymes. Proteins are basically for structures, just to make up the body structure, but can also be used for different functions like enzymes, like hormones. They are also proteins in nature. So they are protein in nature. Then we have hormones. Yes, it's also an example of protein, but we will see them separately. And then we say that nucleic acid. Nucleic acid is also an example of organic compounds. Nucleic acids, these are DNA and RNA. So the genetic makeup of an individual, basically it is DNA, which is an example of a nucleic acid. Then vitamins, these are very important, just needed in small amounts, but they bring about the normal functioning of the body. So they're also examples of organic compounds. So now let's look at carbohydrates in detail. These carbohydrates are made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Actually, their name carbohydrates is derived from the elements it's made up of. It's only carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, no extra molecule. It is carbo, which means carbon, and hydrate. Hydrate is derived from water, which is made up of oxygen and hydrogen. So two hydrogen molecules and one oxygen molecule or atom, then they form hydrate, the water molecule. So carbohydrates are made up of carbon, which is this carbon, and then hydrate, which is water and is made up of oxygen and hydrogen. What are some of the uses of carbohydrates? Number one, stores energy. Energy can be stored in form of starch, that is case of plants, and glycogen in case of animals. So you'll find out that in starch, the food you eat, in most especially like maize, sorghum, is made up of carbohydrates, made up of starch. However, if this food is a little bit sweet, it means that the starch has been converted into glucose, which is a little bit sweet. So starch is an example of a carbohydrate in plants, and then glycogen is an example of carbohydrates in animals in a storage form. And you can find this in the liver, muscles, and other cells. Then number two, they provide energy. When you break down this into glucose, then the glucose can be used during cellular respiration to produce energy in the mitochondria, or in the mitochondria if you're talking about many mitochondria. So basically carbohydrates is a source of energy. So you can store the energy, use it later, or you can use it immediately. So it's a source of energy. Number three, it provides this structure and protection of the cell. It makes up a structure of the cell and also provides protection. If you look at the cell wall in plants are made up of cellulose. Cellulose is an example of a carbohydrate. Therefore, carbohydrates can also be used for protection. So basically, it stores energy, provides energy when it breaks down the glucose. You produce energies for the normal functioning of the body, and then you have structure, make up the structure of the cell, and also protection if you look at the cell walls. Let's look at the types or classes of carbohydrates. Number one, we have what you call the monosaccharides. Mono means one, saccharides means sugar. So it's the sugar made up of one molecule. Basically, if you look at here is the structure of that sugar. Then you have disaccharides. Di means two, saccharides means sugar. So it has two molecules of monosaccharides. Then you have polysaccharides, means many sugars, many molecules of sugar or monosaccharides. So examples here, you'll find out that example of monosaccharides, you'll find out we have glucose and fructose. These are examples. And then you have disaccharides. Examples you can find out in maltose. Maltose is an example of disaccharides, and the sucrose is an example of disaccharide. Then you have polysaccharides, starch, cellulose, and glycogen are examples of polysaccharides. So it means that if it is made up of two, because we said two. So maltose is made up of two glucose molecules, while sucrose is made up of one glucose molecule and one fructose molecule. So there are two of them. And then starch is made up of many glucose molecules, same as cellulose is made up of many glucose molecules, but arranged in a different form. So to form these kinds of molecules. Then you need to know that the smallest or simplest unit of any substance is called a building block. Like if you look at a house, it has bricks. So the building blocks of a house is called a brick. So sometimes in science we call it monomers. So what are the monomers here? So we say that the monomer of carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. An example is a glucose molecule. So it's a monomer of carbohydrates. Let's look at how do you test for starch. How do you test for starch? Starch is being tested by using iodine solution. To show the presence of starch, then if starch is present, it will turn blue-black. So if starch is present, it will turn like this. It looks black here, but if you shake it, it becomes blue. If you look at the top of it, you find out that it has blue-like some color there. So it is not that blue, it's not that black. Yeah, so it is just blue-black. That's why we say it's blue-black. It has a blue color if you try to shake it. It's just that it's just dark color. And if starch is absent, it will remain yellow or orange depending on the concentration of iodine. So if starch is absent, is negative, then you will find out that it looks like this. If starch is present, yes, then it will look like this. Your sample will look like this. Or it can be a little bit, it could be a little bit lighter depending on the amount of starch you find in the sample you have tested. Then you have a glucose test. Here we use what called the Benedict solution. Benedict solution, if it is present, if glucose is present, it will turn from blue to green to yellow. It could be green to yellow, green or yellow, orange, and then red or brown, depending on the concentration. So it will turn from green, orange, and then red or brown, or it will turn from yellow, orange, and then red. So it's like this. It will turn from blue, it will go to green, or it could be green or yellow, and then to go to orange, and then to go to red. But to get this, In most cases, you need to warm it up so that the reaction is a little bit faster. So if it is negative, it will remain blue like this. Then when it is blue, then we know that it is negative. Glucose is not present in that kind of sample you are trying to test. But if it is present, it will turn from blue to green to orange and then goes to red.